Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the August 8th, 2026 Garrison Board of Education regular workshop. Dusty, April 8th, sorry. Spring break. The April 8th, thank you, 2026 Garrison Board of Education regular workshop meeting. Dusty, will you please call the roll?
Jocelyn Apsello. Here. Eric Arnold.
Here.
Jennifer Harrington Wilson. Here. Dan Jasnow.
Here.
Peter Lesser.
Here.
Ken Schott.
Here.
Sarah Torman. Here.
Pledge allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Do we have any proposed changes or questions about today's agenda? Be resolved that the Board of Education of the Garrison Union Free School District hereby accept the agenda as presented. May I have a motion?
Motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Dr. Stoll, Superintendent's Report.
Thank you very much. So, welcome back. I hope everybody had a wonderful spring break. My superintendent's report is going to be relatively short this evening. We have number one, our budget presentation, and also an update for the community this evening about where we are on curriculum and instruction and really innovative teaching and learning. I usually start my superintendent reports off on like a really positive high note, and there's so much to be thankful about and so much to be really grateful for. Wonderful things are happening here. However, we do have a little bit of a blip in our modified sports program for the spring. It's not by a lack of effort of trying. We offered 4 modified sports this spring, and these are combined programs in both Haldane and Garrison. We're not able to field 3 of the 4 teams. So boys baseball has started. There are 4 Garrison students and 10 Haldane students, but we had really low sign-up participation for boys lacrosse, and girls softball. We really tried, Patrick Beckley tried, Haldane tried to get kids to, maybe if they haven't played, that's fine. We just couldn't get enough from students from both schools to field the team. So unfortunately, we're not able to run boys lacrosse, and girls softball. We will try again next year. So I just wanted to report that to the community and the board, and we'll look for ways to get more interest in the future, but both schools are having that issue. Earlier this evening at 6:30, we held our pre-K lottery. As the community knows, and we've been sending out, and as the board knows, our pre-K program is capped at 18 students. There were 22 registered students that were in the lottery. We had a live lottery that was also live streamed on our YouTube channel, and we were able to pick the 18 slots and the 4 numbers that are on our wait list. What will happen is tomorrow we are going to send those families letters, whether they have a slot, they're going to get a letter in a form where they have to return to us by April 13th, whether or not they're going to accept the slot or not accept the slot. If there are individuals that don't accept a lottery pre-K slot, we're going to go and offer those to the folks on the wait list in the order they were selected in the lottery. The good news is that our pre-K program is strong and healthy, and we have a lot of registrants. I wish we had more space for those 4 families, but hopefully we'll be able to make sure that those families have a spot in the future. I just want to, and Mike will talk a little bit in his report, but we really had a very strong professional learning day. While we sent all our kids home, our staff was here hard at work on March 27th. We had a keynote speaker, Dr. Robert Dillon. He's the author of the Space Book, and he is kind of nation known. He flies all around the country looking at instructional spaces and talking about how does instructional spaces promote student wellness, promote student learning, and really send a message. And we have a follow-up plan with him. Our staff was incredible. incredibly motivated by him, and they're already making moves in their classroom. We did some curriculum mapping, and you'll hear more about it in Mike's report. We did CPR certification, and we started to explore, as you see in our budget, we're going to look at pilot programs for our writing and our literacy as we start to map out our ELA curriculum. We're really strong in our science and reading, but we need to relook at our writing and literacy, so there were time for staff to look at that too. So a lot of incredible work happened on the 27th. I want to thank Mike for his leadership in that, but also thank our staff for really being energized and excited the day before break. I had to kick some of them out of the building with already moving things in their classroom after that. So it's really great to see when we have motivated teachers who are excited about the work. That's really what makes this place special. A couple, as I like to remind folks, a couple deadlines are approaching. Summer Scholars, April 10th. So if you're gonna, again, in our budget is the continuation of our Summer Scholars program. April 10th is the deadline for that. April 14th to 16th is ELA testing, grades 8 through 8. April 25th is the GSEF Spring Thaw, and I know information has gone out about that, a wonderful event that supports grants for our students and our staff. April 28th through 29th is the 5th grade science exam. May 7th at 7 p.m. is the 4th through 8th grade talent show. We have some talented students in this building. I cannot wait to see what they put on. So please join us on May 7th at 7 p.m. for our 4th through 8th grade talent show. Again, you'll hear it from Joe and I this evening in our budget presentation. May 19th is the budget vote from 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. And also save the date, May 29th is our annual Youth Climate Summit. More information to follow. We're also going to have a community component that evening, which we'll talk a little bit more about and make sure the community comes and celebrates after a successful Youth Climate Summit. And just a reminder, I'm going to probably do it in every superintendent's report. When you're starting to think about summer plans, school starts on September 1st next year, and that is before Labor Day. So just be aware as you start to map out your summer plans. And that concludes my superintendent's report. I'm happy to answer any questions from the board.
Any questions for Greg? All right, thank you, Greg. I am also going to keep my president's remarks very brief. I don't have too much to add, and I know we have a lot to cover in the budget presentation. Welcome back from break to everybody. Good to see everyone. I think it's the first time we've been together as a full complement in a couple of meetings, so that's nice. Just want to share with the community that we had a board retreat just before the break, a mini retreat focusing on some of the stuff that we talk about at a lot of these meetings, community engagement, volunteerism, how the board can better engage with our community partners and other stakeholders. So thank you to the board members for what I think was a very productive conversation. And I still have some to-do items out of that, but I think it sets a really good stage for us moving forward on other items we can work on to strengthen community relationships in particular. And that, I think, is it for now. I'll hold some other questions until we get to the budget presentation. So moving on to our final 2026-2027 budget presentation with Dr. Stoll and Joe Jimick, our school business administrator. Please take the podium.
Good evening. This is our final budget presentation before the board has to consider it for adoption this evening. I'm just going to briefly go over this. I've gone over it the last couple of times. We're going to really focus in on the areas that are relatively new from our first budget presentation. But our budget objectives are pretty clear. We want to stay within the allowable tax levy, which this budget does. We want to provide the Garrison community with a transparent budget process based upon input from key stakeholders and our finance committee. we not only want to repair and properly maintain our facilities, we also want to enhance our learning spaces, and you'll see that in this budget presentation. We're going to continue to maintain budget lines that are based upon actual spending and aligned with our projections. We're going to maintain our staffing levels and support the wonderful programming that we have put in place in this district, and we want to make sure that everything is aligned to our strategic goals, but also our vision of a Garrison graduate. So I'm not going to talk about the goal. It's something we live by, our students live by, our staff lives by, but our budget has four main priorities. One, most importantly, it's why we're here, it's why we do what we do. It's our instructional programs and initiatives. Two, it's our staffing that make those things possible. Three, it's the places where we make these things possible in our infrastructure and capital projects. And then lastly, if we don't have students here in the morning, we can't teach them. So transportation is also a major component of this budget. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what's in this budget in terms of instructional programming. Number one, and Mike is going to talk a little bit about it this evening, and get a little bit of a lens into our fellowship. But one, we want to ensure that we have innovative instruction and innovative student learning. And so there's funding in this budget for our Empowered Classroom Fellowship, and that includes classroom furniture, innovative and engaging future-focused instruction. So that's new in this budget. We also talked, and I talked a little bit about it in my superintendent's report. We need to really look at our literacy and our writing programs, and so we're going to have funding to pilot, and we have some teachers that are really excited to pilot. So we need some seed money to pilot some of these programs and see if we're aligned to who we are as the Garrison School District, but also aligned to our curriculum maps that we're building. We talk about instructional spaces, so either new or improved. The big piece in this budget is an immersive outdoor educational learning space. It is not a novelty. It is advancing our work in environmental education. It'll provide authentic, hands-on learning. And Mike will talk a little bit about this evening. It's going to actually be aligned to our curriculum so that there are times and spaces and places where kids must be out in the forest, and that is aligned to our environmental curriculum, our environmental education curriculum, our science curriculum. And Mike will talk a little bit about that later if that comes along. Also, there's partial funding for a primary playground. We're working with GSEF to have them fundraise for a portion of it. But that primary playground, it is end of life and needs to be replaced. We can't even repair it. They don't even make some of the slides and other things in there. So we really do need to provide a safe and fun environment for our primary school students. If you've been in our gym, it's a beautiful gym. But there's some things in there that need to go, and that is our scoreboard. Our scoreboard is original to when that addition was put on. There are lights missing. We can't even buy those lights anymore. So it is time to move forward, and there's funding for a new scoreboard. And our soccer goals too are at the end of their usefulness, and we need to replace those as well. We're going to continue all the programs, and you've heard me talk about our environmental education program and the Youth Climate Summit. The district has put a lot of emphasis on this and priority on this, and this budget continues to support that, including our Youth Climate Summit. We have a robust social emotional program. When the kids came back from break, they were skipping into the building. I mean, like high-fiving, skipping, smiling. I remember going to school, and when I came back from a long break, that was not my MO. I was not skipping into my elementary school and high-fiving everybody. But that's because being here feels safe, it feels warm, and that doesn't, and kids feel seen and heard, and that doesn't happen by accident. That happens by having a robust social emotional learning program, and two wonderful clinicians and teachers that buy into that program. If you listen to our band and our chorus, both elementary and middle, they just keep getting better and better every year, and we want to continue to support that. We have wonderful programming, our theater program, if you saw Annie Jr. And Singing in the Rain last year, wonderful theater program. We want to continue to support that. Our younger kids do yoga, they enjoy it. We offer e-music. We want to continue those things. We also want to continue our out-of-classroom extracurricular experiences and field trips. This budget continues to support that. Thanks to the support of this board and our advisors, we want to continue our middle school extracurricular clubs and activities. We've added new clubs since I've been here. We've added a debate club, we've added a Chinese cultures club, we've added a Spill the Positivity podcast club, which I hope some of you have seen. Their work is phenomenal. They haven't interviewed me yet, I don't know why, avoiding me, I guess. We're also going to continue our Summer Scholars Program, a program that 30 to 40 families participate in, that has gotten really great reviews, and this program supports that. As you recall, a couple of years ago it was grant funded. This year we put it in our budget, we want to continue to support that as well. Lunch, every once in a while you hear about lunch from me or someone else. It's not always 100% smooth, but it's a really popular program where 120 to 160 students enjoy getting a free lunch every day. And we want to continue to support that. We also have a robust intervention system with our multi-tiered systems of support. That requires support and funding, so we want to continue that. We have, as I said earlier, our SEL program would not work without two wonderful clinicians, our school counselor and our school psychologist. We want to continue that. Our SPO has been a nice addition to our program, even playing in our 8th grade versus staff basketball. He's actually a much better basketball player than I am, so we want to continue that program as well. We also want to continue the high quality. I gave you just a snippet, you'll hear a little bit more this evening. We have really ramped up our professional development for our teachers in the area of curriculum, instruction, innovation, equity. We want to continue that. And lastly, which is very unique for us, our students and families have a choice of 3 outstanding high schools, and every year I go and I meet with the students that are there, particularly the 9th grade students that transition, and no matter where they go, their overall experience has been wonderful, and what a unique opportunity they have to almost do a mini college, coming through the last part of the college process with my family. This is really good training ground for them to really select a school that fits them and who they are and what they want to study. So they're way ahead of my kids in selecting colleges. So that's a really nice addition that having Putnam Valley and continuing with Howden. I want to talk a little bit about enrollment. I'm not going to go through all the numbers. I will say overall we're relatively flat. I will say that our pre-K program is at capacity, which is really good for us from the standpoint of people are moving in or having kids in the district and want to send their students here. But all in all, currently we have 13 sections, if you will, from pre-K to grade 8, and next year we're projecting the same. So our enrollment is pretty stable, where many enrollments in the region are actually going down. Ours is pretty stable, which is a testament that people want to be here, they stay here, and they want to come. We have a slight dip next year in the number of projected high school enrollments. That could go up. We have families that do move in with high school age kids, and that could go up. But we're currently at 101 students that we send to one of our 3 choices high schools, partner high schools, and next year we're looking at 96 students. All in all, there is no staffing changes projected, nor are we requesting any staffing changes because we believe all of our needs are being met, doing all the things that we want to do. So we currently have 31.15. Don't ask me about the 0.15. It's there though. We're going to continue with the 31.15. It doesn't mean that we have like a 0.15 of a person running around. It just means there's part-time for them. I'm going to kick it over to Joe. He's going to talk the numbers and do a little bit about the proposed budget breakdown and really walk us through some of the expense changes that you'll see in this budget. Joe? Oh, let me just, I always mess this one up, right? So again, continuing, I want to put some numbers towards some of this continuing programs. So the Youth Climate Summit every year costs us about $10,000. This is what we want to continue. Our field trips, which the board has put in as part of an operating budget, which has been really helpful, and we have a robust field trip program. That's $25,000. Our Summer Scholar program costs around $30,000. Our SPO program costs around $53,900. And our school lunch program costs just under $50,000. So we want to continue those things. And then I talked a little bit about some of the equipment purchases we want. The playground, it has about the primary playground has about $100,000 in this budget. The empowered classroom, which is our fellowship that I talked about, is about $40,000. $7,500 for a new scoreboard, and soccer goal is about $5,000. We have some special ed transportation increases around 75, and our BOE services has gone up a little bit to 249, and I think Joe spoke about this before. It's not that we're spending that much more, it's that we can now get our technology vendor, Acture, through a BOCES contract, which we get aid on now. But it also includes our wireless access points, which you'll see up here. They're end of life, and the reason we need to replace them is when they're end of life, it means that there's no updates for them anymore. They become susceptible to hacks and malware and all of that, so you really need to update them from a safety and security standpoint. So replacing all the wireless access points is about $40,000, and that's in that budget. So I'm going to kick it over to Joe to talk a little bit about some of these changes.
Thank you, Dr. Stoll. So we want to just review some of the changes that happened as the budget has been evolving over the development period. And we did change some components after the March 4th presentation. We increased a budget line for legal expenses, as well as some increases that are related to the heating and cooling improvements that we need to make within the district. So we'll get to that a little bit more when we get to the capital portion of the budget, but supplemental heating is if next winter we need to add additional heating before the energy performance contract work is done, that's what that is for. And then with the current events in the world, we did make some additional increases for gasoline and electric, just in case. The good thing about this is if we don't need it, it'll always just return to fund balance, but we'd rather have it than not have it. So just in case we increase those two budget lines. And that's our projected transportation expenses. You see that there's always a big difference between the actual that are from the years past and what the projected are. We have to allow for special education students to move in, so we typically have additional contingent runs for special education in the budget, so that's why there's a difference between what you see actual versus the 25, 26, and 26, 27 numbers. This is what inflation looks like as of September of 2025. So Garrison is still one of the lowest. We're tied for the lowest with one other school district, Canico. And then Curious Joel is next, and then a Dutchess County district, which is known as Weebatuck or Northeast, is the next one after that, and then Haverstraw is the highest in the region. The tax cap is really, for us, there's not a lot of components in it. We have the tax base growth factor, the prior year's levy, and the allowable growth factor, as well as the exclusions. And for us, the only exclusion is the capital component. So it's 2% or the rate of inflation, which is whichever is less, so 2% is the allowable inflation factor. And we built this budget to keep the capital component the same year over year, so the exclusion is the same. And we don't have any court orders or judgments or any pilot payments in Garrison, so they don't factor in. It's really only those components. And there's our tax cap formula. The maximum allowable levy under the cap is $11,915,206, and that is what the tax levy is requested, and that's an increase of $264,000 or 2.27%. The median home value, full value in Phillipstown is $978,000, and in Putnam Valley it is $543,000, and this equates to a median increase year over year of $178 in Phillipstown, or $99 in Putnam Valley if you have a home that is at the median value. And that's $14 per month, or $8.24 per month. Are we seeking an override? No. It's at the limit, and it just requires a simple majority vote. This is the revenue. So the revenue consists of the components that you see there. So we have obviously the biggest component is the property taxes, and you have aid is the 3000 series at the bottom, and then we have the use of 100,000 of the debt service reserve, 1.7 million of undesignated fund balance, and then the interest and tuition for our bridge program you see there. So before the end of the school year, the Finance Committee may recommend the reallocation of a portion of the remaining undesignated fund balance to bolster the reserves. That will probably be done in May or June. And this is just what, if we use the undesignated fund balance and the fund balance to support next year's budget and the current budget, we estimate that in this year, instead of 1.4 million, we might use 1 million of the fund balance, and then next year we are budgeting for 1.7 million, but perhaps we might use 1.5 million of fund balance to support the 26-27 budget. Those are all estimates. This is the proposed budget with the main components. The biggest changes that you see are to do with debt service and the interfund transfers. So the transfer to capital went down slightly. The transfer to the school lunch fund went down quite a bit, and that's why there's a big change with those two together in the interfund transfers. And then the debt service is increased by the amount of increase for the energy performance contract, which we'll get into in a minute. So the energy performance contract hasn't started yet. We are still awaiting a resolution with our former architectural engineering firm, but we really do need to put this in and get this started because the improvements are needed to improve the heating and cooling performance of the building. So we can't really wait any longer. We need to get this done and get it into the budget so we can have SED look at it and approve it. So the energy performance contract has a number of components with it. So we have building envelope improvements, that's primarily insulation. Dedicated outdoor air systems, which is essentially you take fresh air in and you condition it, and provide that to the classrooms in a dedicated unit, as opposed to what we have now, which is all the fresh air is brought in through the unit ventilators. We have control systems upgrades to accommodate those dedicated outdoor air system units. We have destratification fans, and then lighting upgrades. All those things together are estimated costs of $247,000 a year for 15 years at 5% interest. So what we're looking to do is add insulation at strategic areas in the building. If you look at the picture, that's a thermal image of the elementary school section of the building. You see at the very top where the cursor has a temperature listed there. That is an area where there's a lot of heat loss, and that's why it's that bright yellow color. So what we're going to do is add addition of insulation in those tops of the outside walls to tighten it up and reduce heat loss and energy use. And the outside air systems are the biggest component. So that provides fresh air that's at the room temperature, the set point. and it eliminates what we have as fresh air coming in through the unit ventilators. It will increase the amount of heat that it can put into the system, and it includes additional mechanical units on the roof and additional heat pumps. That's an example of what might be a rooftop unit. And then the most efficient way, if you have dedicated outdoor air system, is to move from discharge air temperature control to space temperature control. So that means you use whatever discharge air temperature that's necessary in order to get the space temp to the set point that you want. It reprograms the outside air dampers in the unit ventilators to only be used in something that's called economizer mode, which is when the outside air temperature is closer to the target temperature that you want the room to be, and you just ventilate with outside air. And then to balance the unit ventilators to function as cabinet heaters and air conditioners, much like you would have a split unit in a house, very similar to that. This is a picture of in our art room, and what it shows is the heat plume of the heat coming out of the vent and traveling across the ceiling and then going over to the windows and going out through the windows and the leaks in there. So with a destratification fan, so fans blowing down from the ceiling, that gets all that warm air that's at the ceiling height down into where the occupants are, so that you make more efficient use of it and less of it goes outside. So this increases comfort and reduces energy loss. That's another part of what would be in the big spaces like this space, the art room, and the gymnasium. And then there are, even though there are a lot of lighting upgrades that are already done, like this room here has LED lights in it, but not all the spaces. We have some outdoor lights, some lights that are in storage areas, and some other smaller components of the building. They still need to be replaced with LED fixtures, and that's going to be included as a part of the project.
So Joe, just to pause there and cover a little bit of sort of ground that we've talked about over the last couple meetings and maybe folks have seen in the press. The energy performance contract is at least somewhat related to the lawsuit that the district has filed against Tetra Tech, which was the engineering architectural firm for the 2021 capital project. And the district had been engaged in lengthy negotiations with Tetra Tech to try and resolve what was clearly some performance inadequacies with the HVAC system that was installed as part of the 2021 capital project. Unfortunately, we have not been able to reach a resolution with them. However, we remain hopeful that we will reach a resolution that will be in the best interest of the district and its taxpayers, and will restore the building to the level of performance that aligns with state ed requirements. The energy performance contract is how we are pursuing those changes now in the absence of that reasonable resolution from Tetra Tech. I know it has a fairly high dollar figure associated with it on an annual basis. My understanding is that so we are expecting to be able to pay for that loan, at least in part through the energy savings that we expect to get from these changes that you've just outlined, the addition of the DOAS units, additional insulation, lighting upgrades, control system upgrades, destratification fans. So the idea with this mechanism is that we will realize savings in energy, and we will use those savings to help pay back the loan that we will get in order to pay for these upgrades. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct. The energy performance contracts are what's considered a ordinary contingent expense by SED as far as how school districts can budget for it. So it's a budget line item that we can do. We don't need a separate resolution for that one item to approve it. It also has a mechanism, like you said, where the savings in energy in terms of kilowatt hours or BTUs or whatever, however you measure it, reduces the overall cost. And there are guarantees that the energy performance contractor has to give the district to say that it will save a specific amount of energy. This savings, this amount here is net of what those savings are. However, if we are able to recover any other monies, it would just reduce the overall cost of the project.
And there is also there's a performance guarantee in the EPC, so that
Yes.
if we don't hit those, the projected energy savings, then is it the energy performance sponsor that makes up the difference? We don't take a hit if we don't hit those energy savings, is that right?
Yes, so there's an agreed upon rate for the energy and agreed upon amount of savings in energy that has to be demonstrated, which is verified by an independent third party, independent of the energy performance contractor and the district. And basically what they do is over the 15-year life of the financing, they are checking the savings to make sure it matches what it's supposed to be. And if it isn't, the energy performance contractor would owe the district money for whatever that would be.
And then, meanwhile, we, as I said, remain hopeful that Tetra Tech will ultimately make a contribution to the to some of these changes, and that we will reach some sort of resolution, whether through litigation or otherwise, where we're hopeful that they will provide some sort of financial contribution. If we do receive an additional contribution, financial contribution from them, can you speak to how that impacts the EPC?
Yeah, so it could offset the payments, so it could be in the form of a reduction in payments that we have to meet. It could possibly be a reduction in the length of the actual loan, or it could be money that's used, that comes into the district, that could be used to offset other expenses. Depends on the timing of when money would come in and what makes the most sense to do with it.
Okay. Any other questions on those elements? Okay.
And then obviously this was a big part of the winter time, was developing a classroom to be used in the Garrison Forest. And we're excited to have that as a part of the budget. So with the energy performance contract and the entire scope of the forest classroom project, it all fits in the budget with the amount that we have for the capital exclusion that we had in last year's budget. The same amount fits here. So it includes the entire outdoor classroom, all of the hardscape work, all of the benches and the structure, and all of the includes the compostable toilet, the parking lot improvements, everything. So that's in the budget for $493,000. And then this is the change between when we did the first budget presentation to what we have currently. Is originally we had the painting that needs to be done on the front of the 1908 building, so the main entrance was listed as a capital project, but after further consultation with our architects and how there isn't actually any construction scope, it's really a maintenance project. We're going to do that with the funds that we have in the current year's budget that we have that are available, and just budget for that and do that painting project as soon as we can. So it doesn't require any SED approval or anything. Most likely what's going to happen is as soon as we get our hazardous material testing back, we'll develop a bid for it, bid it out, and then start that project. So that's the main changes. That came out. The energy performance contract amount was increased to match what is the full scope of what we need in order to do these HVAC improvements and all the energy improvement stuff that's listed. And then the outdoor classroom, that's the entire entire amount is in there.
And so we are budgeting, as you said, for the full outdoor classroom project. We did share at the previous board meeting that we are in discussions with Hudson Highlands Land Trust about the possibility of a donation and a partnership with them to bring this outdoor classroom to fruition. So is it right that we're essentially budgeting for this outdoor classroom as we initially presented, which was, I think it was 2 or 3 meetings ago, we had the architects here, we showed the full plans for that, the site that is off of 403. If something comes together with the land trust, then there may be some changes to that plan, but we would at least still have the money in the budget to proceed with at least the early stages of the planning, pending any changes based on land trust contributions. Is that right?
Yes, so what is most likely going to happen is that if there is a donation of some land, we're going to have to ask permission to accept it. So at the time when you ask permission to accept it, if there's a change in scope of what this is, you would also ask for permission for whatever that might be. So if you ask permission for this and the public approves it, we can, as soon as the public approves it, we can begin planning that work and get, because obviously anything that involves state education department has a long lead time. So we can get that started. If it changes, we would ask the public for permission to do that change. And if there's a change in amount, you would ask them then.
Great. And does that have to be a vote? Public vote?
Yeah. Which doesn't have to be at budget time. You can make another one. It would depend upon the timing of when the land would come in, if it comes in.
Any questions? Similar, with the EPC and the Tetra Tech question, so part of this preliminary proposal that we've been discussing would involve the sale of a conservation easement on the property, or on the school forest. The district would retain title to the land, correct? It would just be the sale of the encumbrance or the restriction on the property that would prevent us from developing that land, is that right?
Right. The current restrictions on the development end as of December of this year, December 31st of this year. And unless there's any additional restrictions put in place, the district could choose to sell the land, do whatever it is that they want to do.
Right. And that was an encumbrance that was in the original transfer of the land however many years ago.
Yes, from the 50s.
Yeah. So we've been operating under a deed where we could not develop the property. That restriction is going away at the end of this year. So theoretically, we could develop it and turn it into condos or whatever we wanted to do with it. Not that we would ever do that, but that is what has been restricting us from doing that.
Yes.
If we were to sell this conservation easement, would essentially be putting the land that we would continue to own back under a similar development restriction.
Yes.
Yeah, question on that. We would need a separate, so on the public when we're enter that easement. Also, if we did in any scope think about developing the land, that also.
She can't, I'm sorry.
We can't hear you very well,
Yeah.
and we'd love to hear all the details that you're discussing.
Sorry
And
about
Dan,
that.
that applies to you too.
Okay, so that would be a separate public vote. If we were to accept the easement, anything we do with the land has to go before a public vote.
Any transaction that's related to land requires the public
Requires
vote.
a separate referendum.
Yes.
Just like we do for our contracts with the high schools and things like that. When I say separate, that's how we break it out.
Yes, it can occur at the same time as the budget vote if you want, as a separate resolution, but you have to proposition, I should say, proposition, and then or you could do it at another time. Whatever.
Can you speak a little bit, sorry, to the timeline for outside of the Hudson Highlands Land Trust process for the outdoor classroom as is? Right now we have a preliminary budget and presentation from the architects that was put together with the committee of volunteers, community members, teachers, staff. who spent quite a bit of time putting that together. That's what they're going to be working off of, using this budget to start the paperwork for SED, correct? And
Yes.
we're going to continue with that process, pending approval from the voters, to move this project forward as part of the budget. We can continue working with the architects to develop the plans to go to SED. So that project will continue regardless. until
Yeah,
that
it,
timeline.
it would continue as soon as the public says yes to the budget, it could continue.
Can I just add to that? The reason that's in this budget, regardless of what happens with the Hudson Island, you can't submit to SED any sort of plans to do any sort of work until you have a funding stream. And so if it's not in this budget, and it would delay the timeline of this project. And right now, the project scope, if everything went perfectly with facilities and planning and SED, we're looking at October of 2027. And that's if we have funding secured through the budget proposition, and then we started doing the paperwork. And regardless of where it is, the earliest we would be able to use the facilities, according to our architects, is October 2027. So there's a long lead time until students and staff get to use this.
Thank you.
And then, so assuming the conversation proceeded with the land trust, we proceed with the sale of the easement, that would potentially generate additional revenue for the district. And how would we allocate those proceeds? We're budgeting for this amount now for the plan as has been presented. If the land trust piece goes forward, and the easement piece goes forward, how would that affect the financial situation of that project?
You would ask the public to use the proceeds from the sale to support an increase in the project budget. So if there is funds that are associated with the recording of a new restriction, you have to accept that by the public vote first, and then at the same time you would ask, would the public be okay with increasing the budget to whatever the new number would be if the scope is a little bit different, because potentially there is the ability to build a larger, more robust space in the proposed or the possible.
But we could also choose to reallocate those funds to other district expenses, is that right? Essentially, we've already spent money on this project. We would be able to recoup some of those funds from the sale of the easement and reallocate it to something else if we had voter approval for it.
Put it in the fund balance, right?
You can do that too, yes.
Yeah. Any other questions? Okay, great. All right.
Okay, so we have a few decisions to make tonight. In order to support this budget as written, the district must allocate $1.789 million of undesignated fund balance to support the expenditures. The tax levy is at the levy limit, 2.27%. It requires a simple majority. If the proposed budget is defeated, we could hold the board may choose to hold a revote on this budget or a different budget. Or the board could prepare and adopt a contingent budget without going back to the voters. The contingent budget requires a 0% tax increase. It increases the budget gap by $264,000, and that has to be removed to balance the budget. We have staffing cuts that would affect program and administration, and we would have to maintain under the administrative cap. And these are the contingent budget cuts that you would have. It's basically all equipment except maintenance and special education equipment would be eliminated from the budget. And that's the new playground. That's the empowered classroom initiatives, the soccer balls, and the new scoreboard. All those would be eliminated with the contingent budget. Some of the staff development and training would be eliminated. The use of the facilities by outside organizations would be eliminated. The summer scholars program would be eliminated, and the SPO program would be eliminated under a contingent budget.
Just a quick question on that.
Yeah.
There's requirements of where the cuts have to be made in a contingent budget. You can't just say, oh, we're gonna cut this one thing.
Well, the main thing is you have to maintain under the administrative cap. The budget for equipment that's a requirement. So that you have, those are the equipment lines have to come out. So that's not a choice. You can't choose to not take the equipment out. But the other things you need to balance to maintain under the administrative cap.
If I just add, Jen, one of the things you try to shield was, teaching and learning, right? So like what happens in kids' classrooms. And unfortunately, when districts go through a contingency budget, you try to shield as much as you can, teaching and learning, core teaching and learning that you're required to do. So something like the Summer Scholars Program is a great program, we love it, but it's not required. So instead of cutting something that the kids are required to have, we cut something like the summer program because I don't feel like it's an extra, but it is an extra. It's not required under state education plan.
So we have 3 propositions on the vote. So the first one is the actual budget amount of $15,550,328. And then we have 2 terms of construction contracts that basically we renew every few years so that we have a mechanism to know the cost of tuition for the 7th and 8th grade students advancing into the high school programs. So this one, we have one for Haldane and one for Highland Falls for Montgomery. And then by April 20th, you have to have your petitions in if you want to be a board member. And we'll have another presentation of the budget. It's on May 6th. It's our public hearing. And on May 19th is the budget vote. Okay, so if you want to register, you have to make an appointment and see Dusty and register if you're not registered already.
Great.
Any other questions? Go ahead.
Thank you very much. So we are.
She has one.
Yeah. Do you have a question?
Yeah.
You want to go ahead?
Sorry, or did you have?
I have a couple of, you can go ahead.
Oh, okay. I was just wondering, I know that we haven't seen a budget out of the governor's office yet. It looks like it's delayed now until April 14th. Do you feel confident with what you're hearing that the state aid numbers are accurate? I know that's been a question in the past. Or as close as we can be to accurate based on what you're hearing?
I don't see anything that's currently in there that looks like it's going to move the current year's projected amounts. There's maybe some mandate stuff that is further into the future with bus transportation or things like that, but there isn't really anything that appears like it's going to make a big change in the overall allocation. And they're not talking about the increases to pre-K. There's no one that's saying that that's like too much or anything. I didn't hear anything about that, so it doesn't seem like there is any things to be changed. But even if it doesn't come out exactly, state aid is not a very big component of our revenue here, so we're fortunate in that. So even if it doesn't come out, there may be some other things that help to balance that out.
Thank you. Sorry, Dan.
Anyone else?
Yeah, what do we know about, I know the question's gonna come up. What are the Phillipstown, do we know anything about the Phillipstown plan? And our ability to actually, we'll say, why don't you sell some of that land and make money that way? But there was a Phillipstown comprehensive plan a number of years back that restricts multi-plot things. And if we looked at any of that kind of stuff, really.
I don't think that though actually was adopted and restricted it from what I understand of it. I think you could still develop it under it, but it needs to go to approval for the voters anyway. So
Yeah.
I feel like a layer that most other private land doesn't have, is that all of, our land is the public's land
Right.
essentially, so they have to vote on how we use it.
I just was curious whether there were any other restrictions that we have.
Yeah.
We keep looking at Jocelyn just because.
You're Jocelyn, we're all looking at you. I don't, from my last reading, I don't remember.
And I would say, whatever the district decides, whether it's easement or something else, you have to do due diligence, right? You would look at any restrictions that are out there, town, city, state, and then, your own deed restrictions. So, in terms of the deed that we have, those restrictions, as Joe said, in December 31st, 2026, those cease to exist.
And then the current status is also that, we are waiting to hear back from the land trust in terms of where they are on next steps. So there's nothing actively moving at the moment on that, at least on our side. I've reached out to the land trust and just have asked where they are, and they expect to, get back to us in the next week or so. And once we hear back from them, I think we'll have a little more certainty about what the progression would be, what things are looking like, and then we can, I think, begin some of this diligence process.
Can I add, Dan, that they are very supportive of this project in terms of education, preserving the environment, and kind of our focus on environmental education and good stewardship. So, the nice part is whatever happens, they're really supportive of the work that we're doing here and the impact that it's going to have on our students.
Thanks. So just going back to basics on some of these budgetary issues, there's obviously a lot in this budget, including the school forest and the EPC. So I just want to, clarify, and Greg, you said this multiple times, but we are not projecting any reductions in staff under this budget.
No, we look at what our students need, and if there was a need, we would come to this board and this community and ask for a staffing increase. Every department, every grade level, our clinicians, we've all looked at staffing, we feel like we are staffed well to support our students and kind of move the work forward that you're going to hear about this evening.
So that goes both for maintaining existing rates, but there are no unmet staffing needs that you feel like we are not currently accounting for in the budget.
Yeah, and I think that's a great question. I think the community needs to know. We painstakingly start this process in November, right? So we meet with, and Allison meets with teams, and Mike meets with teams, and I meet with teams, and we talk to our teachers, we talk to our clinicians, we talk to our related service providers, and we say, even our elective areas, what do you need to be successful? So if that requires staffing or additional funding, we put it in this budget. So we feel very confident that this budget includes everything that our staff needs to successfully educate our students and kind of move our ball forward on innovative instruction.
And same question for the programming that we are investing in. We're maintaining same levels of programming, if not investing in more for things like arts, music, theater. Those levels are all remaining essentially the same or growing in this budget. Is that right?
That's correct.
And then finally, on repairs and capital projects, in terms of priority repairs, we do have a list, I know, of sort of this building's priorities. The facade has been one that's been on that. The front work, the cement work has been on that as well. I know that's coming up. That was in last year's budget or for this year's budget. That work is going to begin this summer, but are there any other priorities that you think we are not addressing in this budget in terms of, major high priority facilities work?
Yeah, I think the facilities team does a really good job at looking at our building condition survey. And there are a lot of, we have a part of the building that was built in 1908. We have part of the buildings from the 50s. We have part of the building that's from the 2000s. So, like in our own homes, things go after time. So we think that with the gym roof, when that gets done, the roofing projects that we have, we've hit the high priorities, the steps, the masonry work. The major priorities that need to be done today are in this budget. Are there more priorities? Absolutely. There's other roofs that have a little bit more time, but we need to think about in future budget. If we look at our parking lot, that needs to be done. But we are, and I think this board has been very smart about not borrowing those things, but doing capital improvements over time through transfer to capital, so that we can start to get on top of like a maintenance schedule, if you will. So we know what those longer term, actually I'll call medium term improvements are, and those will probably be things you'll see in future budgets. But right now, the major project, the roofs that are being done right now were the ones that were leaking, and so those became top priority, and those will be hopefully completed in the near future.
Great, thank you. Any other questions? All right, thank you guys very much. Thank you. And that brings us to adoption of the 2026-2027 school budget and approval of the property tax report card. Be it resolved that the Board of Education of the Garrison Union Free School District hereby adopts a budget of $15,550,328 for school district purposes for the school year commencing July 1st, 2026 through June 30th, 2027, and further approves a proposition to the school budget to be presented for voter consideration at the annual meeting of the district on May 19th, 2026, which shall read as follows. Shall the sum of $15,550,328 be appropriated to meet the estimated expenditures of the Garrison Union Free School District for school purposes for the fiscal year July 1st, 2026 through June 30th, 2027, and the necessary tax be levied for the same upon the taxable property of the school district after first deducting the monies available from state aid and other sources. And be it further resolved that the board hereby approves the 2026-2027 property tax report card as presented. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Second. Do we need a roll call on this?
No.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? All right. Thank you very much. Moving on to approval of propositions to appear on the ballot of the annual meeting of May 19th, 2026. Be it resolved that the Board of Education of the Garrison Union Free School District hereby authorizes the following propositions to be placed on the ballot for voter consideration at the annual meeting of the district on May 19th, 2026. Proposition number 2, authorization to enter into term of instruction contract with Haldane Central School District. Shall the Board of Education of the Garrison Union Free School District be authorized to contract for a period of not less than 2 and not more than 5 years with the Haldane Central School District for the purpose of educating Garrison students in grades 9 through 12 and to provide the necessary transportation for such students. Proposition number 3, authorization to enter into term of instruction contract with Highland Falls Fort Montgomery Central School District. Shall the Board of Education of the Garrison Union Free School District be authorized to contract for a period of not less than 2 and not more than 5 years with the Highland Falls Fort Montgomery Central School District for the purpose of educating Garrison students in grades 9 through 12 and to provide the necessary transportation for such students? Any questions about these propositions? May I have a motion?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? All right, moving on to Mike McDonald, curriculum and instruction presentation.
Good evening, everybody. For those of you who don't know who I am, my name is Mike McDonald. I'm the Director of Innovation and Learning here at Garrison, and I'm excited to share a little bit about where we are in terms of curriculum and some of our professional learning initiatives and where we are headed. So I'm going to try to give a lot of information as efficiently as possible. I just wanted to start by grounding us with our vision of a graduate. You may have seen some of these thumbnails if you follow us on social media, just kind of seeing how our vision of a graduate lives in action here throughout the school. And so Joel Barker once said, vision without action is merely a dream, action without vision passes the time, but vision with action can change the world. And so it's really refreshing to work in a place where such a strong foundation has been set. And we don't just talk the talk, but we walk the walk, and really making this vision that's been set for our graduates here in GUFS come to life in everything we do. So we're going to touch on 3 key areas in the presentation. One being the progress of our curriculum mapping initiative. Secondly, environmental education and STEAM integration. And then last but not least, we'll talk about some of our professional development initiatives and strategies. And after each one, I'll pause if you have any questions. So we'll dive right into curriculum mapping. To start just with some common language, what is a curriculum map? Ultimately, we're looking at roadmaps for educators, students, and families to understand the sequence of topics, the essential understandings, and the key skills embedded within a course that is accompanied by a timeline for instruction. And why is this process necessary? We want to make sure that we vertically align all of our standards and skills in instruction across grade levels, and have tools to identify where there may be gaps and redundancies within our curriculum. We want to make sure that we're aligning to state standards and assessment timelines. We want to have transparent communication with all stakeholders, including our community, around what is taught in our school. Give our educators flexibility with purpose, have a tool for planning so they can create really meaningful learning opportunities for all of our students. And ultimately, one of the more exciting things around curriculum mapping is where we see opportunities to have really interdisciplinary connections. And so we're going to talk a little bit more about that as it relates to some of our spaces and environmental education as we move forward in the presentation. What you see there on the right is a snapshot of a future public portal where all the curriculum maps that are currently being developed by our fantastic team here at GUFS, all those maps will be accessible through this public portal, accessible on our district website, where families, teachers, community members can see what it is that we're teaching approximately at what time of year in each of our courses from pre-K all the way up through 8th grade. And we'll sample that in just a moment. Overall, our goal that we set as a team, because if you've ever been involved in a curriculum mapping initiative, it is a lot of work, a lot of collaboration, and a lot of documentation. By September of 2026, so this fall, that public-facing portal will be available for all math and ELA curriculum maps across all grades. And so over the course of this school year, our team has been working diligently, and we are on track to meet that goal and have those maps be available by September of 2026. So a couple of things I want to point out. First, you have all the board members, you have a copy of the 6th grade math curriculum map in front of you as a sample. It's one of our more polished drafts as of right now in our process. And so just some things that you can expect to see on these curriculum maps when they reach their final draft phase. They should be usable documents in the sense that you don't have to read every word, but you should be able to get a sense at a quick glance or dive deep if you really want to in any given course. So for 6th grade math, for instance, you'll see at the top, there's a curriculum map at a glance. You can see the sequence of topics from September through June. And if you wanted to learn more about any of those topics, you can dive deeper down below, where there's a narrative of every topic, the standards for New York State that are covered within that topic, and then the knowledge and skills for that topic as well. Knowledge being what we would expect students to understand by the end of that learning sequence, and then skills, what will they be able to do by the end of that learning sequence. Lastly, I just want to give you a preview. This is not live yet, but this is what our portal would look like. And so this is the website that our team is currently building that will be accessible through our district website. And so basically it would describe what a curriculum map is. And then for each of our courses and subject areas, it would hyperlink the different maps where you could click and it would ultimately bring you to these maps that you are previewing tonight. So I'll pause there, because that was our update on our curriculum mapping initiative. Are there any questions?
Yeah, I have two. So Mike, one, do all schools do this kind of work? That's my first question. And then my second question is, how much sort of creativity do the teachers have in building this out? I mean, they have textbooks, and they have what the state requires, how much do they impact what the map says includes?
Yeah, I will, to answer your first question, I will say that there are a lot of districts that engage in curriculum mapping work, but the number one challenge is keeping it mapped. So you might engage in it once and it takes years to map your full curriculum, and then the challenge is keeping it updated. So as things change and as things evolve, constantly revising and refining is part of the challenge. So I think you find that there are a lot of districts that have curriculum maps, but they're not always up to date with what they actually do in the classroom. And so that's going to be part of our work, is trying to keep this as up to date and timely and live to what's really happening in classrooms. And it's really a priority for our revision cycle as we plan it out. And then your second question, we do have curricular resources that we use, but ultimately in the mapping process, that's where teacher creativity comes in, where if they have something that they want to integrate, they plan it out in that map. If they want to resequence things based on what they see is best for students, they would be able to do that. So we're not just mapping out a program. That would actually be pretty simple. We just take what we get and we put it on paper. But the reason why this takes so long is to give teachers that creative flexibility to take the curricular resources we have and then really make it their own.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So just one other question. So these maps apply at the grade level, not at the teacher level, right? So if there's a change in teacher, does that not affect the map? So, or maybe if there are two sections in the same grade, then the same map would apply to both of those sections.
Absolutely. And that's, I mean, we are in a unique situation in that for the most part we have one teacher per grade, but in most districts that's one of the purposes of having a curriculum map, is so that if you have multiple teachers that teach the same course, there's a level of equity of experience for students across different classes. So it's meant to serve that purpose, that the map would be specific to the grade and the course and not follow a teacher and be specific to a teacher. Thank you.
So in terms of keeping them up to date, I can see that being a big job. Like, how is that going to be done, and is that going to take a lot of teacher time?
Absolutely. It'll take a lot of team and collaboration time, which is why we have to think very strategically about our professional learning time and how we engage teachers in that work. I think once it's mapped, it's not as time consuming to revise. The challenge is when you don't have a physical document to look at to be able to make those revisions. I think this is the first big step. And then once it's in place, all of these documents in that portal are live editable documents that only our team will have access to edit. And so once they make changes and revisions, that'll be live for the public as well. Yeah.
So two questions. The first is, in doing this work, have you been looking sort of back and forward to see if there are any holes? Because I think part of what I find exciting about this is ensuring that, by the time you get to a certain grade, you haven't missed any of the building blocks that are necessary to have the skill that you're then going to be working on. So I can't point to specific math skills off the top of my head, but there's a sequence there that needs to happen. Is that part of what you've been doing, is sort of looking up and down, backwards and forwards to make sure the holes are filled, essentially?
Absolutely. That hasn't been a huge part of the work just yet because we are still mapping certain grade levels. But the goal would be that once all of that is fully mapped out, that would give us all of the tools that we need to make those decisions and see where those holes exist.
And then the second question is, have you been looking at what the high schools are doing to ensure that what we do here leads in a natural progression into what is likely going to be occurring in their public high school of choice.
Yeah, that's part of the planned process, is to collaborate with the assistant superintendents for curriculum and instruction in our partner districts to see how what we are doing feeds into the 3 districts, which is hard to do when you partner with 3 different districts,
Yeah.
but to the best of our ability, we'll be doing that coordination.
Great, thank you.
Any other questions about curriculum mapping? Okay. So moving right along, we'll go into environmental education and STEAM integration. And so ultimately, environmental education, our curriculum has been mapped by our fantastic environmental educator, Mrs. Bucola. Students are engaged in really rigorous and authentic learning experiences around environmental education. But the work that needs to be done is really the refinement of that curriculum map in order to align to some of our other initiatives that we're looking to achieve. And so, for instance, this year we've done a lot of work around exploring a new STEAM makerspace. We've been looking into the potential of an immersive outdoor classroom. And so if those spaces are going to be developed, we ultimately have to make sure that the curriculum is there to support the use of those spaces. Otherwise, there's no point in having spaces if we don't have a plan to use those spaces. And so ultimately, we have a 5-year environmental education planning committee that has come together over 3 meetings so far. We have 1 more scheduled in June. And some of our goals include the identifying where refinement needs to take place within our current plans and maps for curriculum for environmental education. How does our curriculum support hands-on learning in our forest and our future makerspace? And how do we ultimately support teachers as we create more intricate learning experiences for students? It's one thing to have these things written in documents, but then how are we supporting teachers in making sure these things can come to life, which is a whole other beast. Ultimately, we've made a lot of progress on our 5-year plan, and so it's in draft mode currently. It will be presented to the board in June so that you can see a more polished draft of what the plan will be for environmental education from 2026 through 2031. Our committee included administrators, teachers, we had school board representation and parent representation, and we also collected some student voice to inform this process through focus groups and surveys that Mrs. Bucola was able to conduct in her class. So ultimately, the work of this committee informed a framework that we're using that incorporates 3 main core components and some overlapping aligned focus areas. And so our core components include a strong interdisciplinary curriculum, which is why our mapping is so important, a connected community, and a future-focused approach. And then our overlapping focus areas within those core components would be the sustainable practices of our school, out-of-classroom learning experiences, and the promotion of student ownership and agency. I'll pause for any questions about the work for environmental ed or STEAM integration. All right. And last but not least, we'll talk about one of my favorite parts of my job, which is professional development. And so we'll talk about it in 3 buckets. So we have 3 main strategies for how we deliver professional development and support to our teachers. And so first is job embedded. So this is PD that happens during the contractual workday. And so we've really taken the approach as a leadership team to plan professional development for all of our stakeholders that are targeted and individualized and embedded within the workday. And so this includes staff meetings, superintendent's conference days. We have engaged teachers in individual coaching cycles and also entered into classrooms and modeled particular strategies in classrooms to support teacher learning. On superintendent's conference days, we take as much feedback as we possibly can. We've arranged interest groups for teacher discussion so they can discuss topics that they're really passionate about and want to learn more about. And we've taken the approach this year of building out really individualized schedules. A lot of districts take the approach of having a one-size-fits-all schedule for their staff on big professional development days. And what often happens is you have folks that are sitting in sessions that aren't really relevant to their role. And so we've really tried to be intentional in making an individual schedule for all of our stakeholders so that everything they're engaged in throughout the day is meaningful and relevant to their role. So you just see some samples of some of the sessions that we have engaged teachers in, including the session with Dr. Robert Dillon that Dr. Stoll mentioned earlier. In addition to the job-embedded professional development that we offer, we have a great after-school for compensation program where we have teachers and administrators who facilitate professional development. And all of this is driven by teacher voice and choice. So teachers provide us insight into the types of professional learning opportunities they really want to see and engage in. We identify facilitators who are competent and qualified to be able to facilitate something in that area. And then we organize a catalog for the year. And so this has been really wonderful this year because most of our professional learning opportunities after school have been facilitated and planned by teachers for teachers, which I would argue is one of the more meaningful professional learning opportunities that you can engage in, because you have someone who's living the same experience as you, kind of showing you a strategy that you're interested in. And so just to share some data with you on how this portion of our professional learning program is going, we have 27 teachers who are eligible for compensation PD after school. 24 of those 27 teachers to date have participated in this program after school hours. It is optional. Teachers register, and we still have a vast majority of teachers participating in it, which is really nice to see. Our highest course participation rate was 15, which honestly, if you saw the breakdown of those 27 teachers and how unique certain roles are, you wouldn't expect all 27 in any given session. So to have 15 sign up for a given session just speaks to our teachers' dedication and willingness to continue to learn and grow their practice. We've had 10 teacher facilitators this year. 2 of our administrators have led sessions. And ultimately, we ask for feedback after every professional learning session, including our professional learning days. And we ask it on a Likert scale that measures relevance, new skills and knowledge, usefulness, organization of our facilitators, and overall satisfaction. And we have a 4.8 out of 5 overall satisfaction rate. Last but not least, one of our new professional development vehicles that we're offering this year is an intensive fellowship that we've called the Empowered Classroom. So it's the vision for the Empowered Classroom to empower participating Garrison Union Free School teacher fellows to engage in professional learning that enhances areas of their instructional practice through active action research in a pillar of their selection with guidance from our GUFS administrative team. So ultimately, in a nutshell, we have 7 pillars for transforming teaching and learning that we use to guide the fellowship. We engage 8 of our teacher fellows this year who opted into the fellowship in professional development around each of the pillars. They selected 1 to focus on this year, and they ultimately dove really deep into that 1 pillar and selected a passion project within that pillar that they are trying something new in their classroom. They are measuring data on it, and then they're reporting back how they know it was successful or not, and we're doing that in cycles of implementation. And so if you're familiar with the continuous improvement model of PESA cycles, that's ultimately what we're engaging our teachers in, where they're planning something, they're doing it, they're studying the data, and then they're acting. Are we going to adopt it, adapt it, or abandon it completely based on the data that we collected? And so right now we're in cycle 3, and that's scheduled to end at the beginning of May. And teachers will then be invited to share at a share fair to all their peers at a faculty meeting in May. And also we're going to invite 1 or 2 of the fellows to present their work to the board at a meeting in May as well. Of our focus pillars that we have available, we have 2 fellows that have focused on personalized learning and feedback. All of our fellows have been engaged in work around optimized learning spaces through the work of Dr. Robert Dillon when he came on the 27th. We have 2 fellows who are focused on active and inspired learners, and then 6 fellows that are really diving deep into rigor and what that looks like in their classroom. And you might say, that doesn't add up to 8, and that's true, because we have very ambitious fellows that decided to take multiple pillars. Any questions about professional development?
With the Empowered Classroom initiative, what happens to the first cohort? Do they continue, do the other pillars, or how does that work?
So we're currently planning out the progression for a continuation of the work. And so one of the first, the second bucket we spoke about with professional learning, which was the after school for compensation professional development. We're looking to build in basically a continuation of cohort 1 into that model, where they can continue either exploring their pillar or diving into other pillars as a group with one another and contribute to the collective learning, while we then invite a second cohort into the fellowship to engage them in the same process that cohort 1 did. Any other questions for professional development? All right, so just to share some next steps and considerations. In terms of our curriculum maps, math and ELA should be complete by the fall of 2026, with science and social studies being done by 2027. We're going to continue refining the environmental education curriculum maps in accordance with our 5-year plan. And then the ultimate goal, at the very latest, we're hoping to have all content areas, including our special area courses, mapped by the spring of 2028. For environmental ed and STEAM integration, we're going to finalize our 5-year plan, present it to the board in June, and if all goes according to plan, start implementing some of our action steps this coming summer. And last but not least, we started our after-school professional development catalog in December this year. Our goal is to start planning it this year for an earlier launch next year, so we can build out a more robust catalog starting earlier in the school year. We're going to build upon our personalized learning framework that we've been exploring this year. And as we mentioned with Peter's question, we're going to try to plan a progression for cohort 1 for Empowered Classroom and launch cohort 2 with 1 or 2 of our cohort 1 fellows presenting to the board in May. Any final questions? Questions?
I'll just say a comment, if you don't mind. Thank you so much. I was on the board, you were too, when we didn't have a planning committee. And then we, as a board, created a planning committee, and we were like, sure, let's do some planning. And we were board members with admin doing it, but it's not like we really had a grasp on what we wanted to do. And we ended up doing the strategic coherence plan and developed the book together, and many good things. So a lot of good stuff came out of it, but now I feel like with the work you're doing and the rest of the leadership team, and of course all the faculty, I mean, it's like amazing. It's like we don't need a planning committee anymore because we have you and your team and the team doing this really excellent work that was clearly missing from the district. And it's pretty impressive, and so I'm very glad you are presenting this to us and that everybody gets to see it now. And thank you.
Great team effort.
Yeah.
And a thank you to the teachers for all the work. I know this has been a lot of time and effort on their part, and I'm really looking forward to their presentations. As a member of the 5-year environmental education planning committee, which I truly enjoy, I can't wait for our presentation. That's been such a unique and fun experience.
Any other questions, comments? Yeah, just echo what Jocelyn and Sarah said. Really incredible work. It's very impressive to see. I know a ton goes into those maps, as well as professional development efforts, and I do think both of those efforts are so central to everything that I think we as a board have prioritized in terms of pushing for innovation and excellence and science-based approaches to learning and to these new spaces. I think when thinking about the makerspace or the outdoor classroom, I think we're all aligned that it really only makes sense to do that if they're going to be deeply embedded in the actual curriculum getting used. So important to do regardless, but just very impressive work, and so thank you very much. We're looking forward to hearing more about it.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Can I make one comment?
Yeah, please.
I would just like to make one comment. Number one, yes, our teachers are incredibly motivated and doing really intensive work in this area. But I also want to thank Mike for his leadership in this. The amount of work that is being done in a very short amount of time with limited resources is remarkable. So, I want to thank Mike for the vision of this board and the goals that we have as a district. We're really moving that ball forward, and we're doing it in a way that's respectful to teachers, but that's innovative, high quality, voluminous, definitely aggressive, and definitely ambitious. But without Mike's leadership, the folks wouldn't follow Mike if he didn't really have a vision to execute that's aligned to the board's vision and the district's vision, and really get teachers excited about this work. And I have to thank you, Mike, because our teachers are excited. As a superintendent, I'm excited. I know our community's excited. And our kids, as I said, they run into this building happy, skipping, ready to learn. So thank you, Mike, for your leadership. I appreciate it.
Great. Thank you, Greg. All right. We are moving on to item 5E, which is a discussion of a resolution for advocacy for Universal Health Insurance Reserve Fund authorization. Sarah, you want to talk a little bit where this came from?
So this actually came out of a Westchester Putnam School Board Association meeting. There are other boards who are looking at, one of the closest to us is Croton, supporting this effort. So basically the state restricts us to a supposedly 4% undesignated fund balance, and it restricts where we can place our reserves and what those reserves can be for. One of the areas that some districts have received allowances for, such as Scarsdale, are a health insurance reserve fund. But they're doing it on a district by district basis. Basically, they apply, and they lobby, and they get it. So what this says is a resolution for asking the legislature and the governor's office to consider allowing school districts to set aside some of their undesignated fund balance, or however we wish to do it, into a health insurance reserve fund. So funds that could be used in a future year to help cover health insurance costs. As we know, health insurance costs can be spiking. Our teachers and administrators have all come forward in their recent contracts and increased their contribution. Taxpayers have increased the contribution we pay. So this would allow, if we get hit with a year, and Joe, you follow this closely, where they come back to us and say it's going to be a much higher amount. We have some money set aside, so it's not a spike in our budget. We're not making cuts to education and programming in order to fund health care for our retirees and our current staff. There's no, even if we do this resolution, there's no guarantee the legislature will support it and write it into law, essentially, but there's hoping, and we've been hearing that there is some enthusiasm in Albany, for this. So given that there's a little bit of excitement for it right now, it seems like a good time for a bunch of districts to come forward, and the bigger the voice to say this would be useful to us. if you look at this resolution or advocacy resolution, you will see towards the bottom of it, I think this is really key. This legislative change carries zero fiscal impact or cost to the state of New York. It merely authorizes districts to maintain their local funds with greater prudence and transparency. It allows us to tell the taxpayers, essentially, we're going to put this aside for healthcare, which we know is going to be a problem in the future, and the money will be sitting there when we need it. So that's why I was excited about it. I would like to create reserve funds for some other issues too, but those aren't on the table right now.
Yeah, I mean, seems like a very good idea to me. So just, you know, I don't know why we wouldn't be able to do it or why we wouldn't support it. So I'm all in favor. Are we asking for board approval to adopt this today?
Right now, we just
Yes.
I think we should adopt it and get the letter out right now, right, Joe? Are you hearing enthusiasm too for this?
There
Like
is
excitement?
there is some. So obviously, when we had the pandemic, the next year after, there was a outsized increase in the amount of insurance premium growth, right? And then as more and more people use GLP-1 medications, that's going to be another thing that's going to increase the growth in future years, because it's anywhere between $1,300 and $1,900 a month for one person on those medications. So those sorts of things, when they all conspire and they add up into a year, unless you have some changes in the number of enrollment that you have in your plan, that could be a big impact. And it's a significant budget item for us.
Any other comments or questions about this?
I think we all wish we could put more money away for things. This is,
Yeah.
I don't know if I would object to the ability to save money for a rainy day.
Great. So, all in favor of moving forward? I don't know that we need a vote on this, right? Or we don't have a resolution for
We
this.
just, I think,
We have a draft resolution. You could adopt this as it's written, or if you want to bring it to the next meeting, it's up to you guys. Do you want to do it now?
I make a motion to adopt it as written.
Please.
Making motion to adopt it as written.
Can I second?
I don't know if you guys can do that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions. Great. All right, we are
Thank
moving
you.
on to, thank you, our first public comment session. Public comment is intended for members of the community to speak openly and voice concerns. In accordance with policy 1510 of the Garrison Union Free School District, any person wishing to speak shall comply with all provisions of this policy. Comments about specific school personnel or individual students is a violation of board policy. Concerns regarding students or personnel should be discussed privately with the superintendent or appropriate administrator. Comments should be limited to 3 minutes, and speakers are asked to conduct themselves in a respectful manner. The board will listen to comments but will not engage in dialogue. Any necessary follow-up will be noted and provided through the appropriate channel. Members of the public wishing to comment during board meetings are asked to place their name and town of residence on the sign-in sheet. Commenters will be invited to the podium to address the board. Lefty.
Hello, my name is Lefteria Zagoreos. I've been watching these board meetings now since they've been happening for this budget. And I guess I feel like I need to get up and speak because no one from the board that's supposed to represent us represented my voice and others in the community who are opposed to having another pavilion built in the Garrison School Forest. There already is a structure in the school forest that was built years ago and has been maintained by the community and is being used. No one can understand why it's necessary to build yet another structure in the forest. The provisions of the deed were clear that all we needed to do was use the forest, as simple as just taking the kids out there. And meanwhile, while we've been raising my children in this community for over 14 years, their classes have gone maybe once a year, if they're lucky, to go into the forest. If we need, the forest is the classroom. It's as simple as that. The forest is the classroom. If we need to have a structure, that the kids need to use near a learning space, the Phillipstown Rec Center, the Desmond Fish Library, and even our own campus have pavilions we could use. And these are near hiking trails, pollinator gardens, and they have access to facilities. I encourage voters to vote to protect our forest. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yeah, Nina? Do you mind signing in, please?
Good evening, Anita Prentice, Garrison. I wish I had $1 for every hour I spent in curriculum mapping. It's quite an undertaking, so you're in good hands here. I came because I read in a paper about conversations with the Hudson Highlands Land Trust about I don't know what the verb is, taking over the school forest, taking over an easement. I really want to encourage you to not do that, to retain ownership of the school forest. It is a asset belonging to the taxpayers of the district. It has been in the school's hands for many years now. I was elected to this board in 2001, and for all that time, the land trust has been saying, "Oh, you've got to give us this. You've got to give us this land. It's got to be preserved in perpetuity." The school board has it in perpetuity, and I think that you, as elected officials, and the people who come after you, can better reflect the needs and desires of the school community, of the Garrison community, than a private nonprofit board with one kind of view of the world. So I just really want to encourage you to hold on to it. And I also would echo Lefty's feelings about an outdoor classroom. I certainly think it's worth investing in improved access to the forest, but it absolutely is its own classroom, and I don't think there needs to be a lot of construction there. But whatever you decide on that, my main message would be to hold on to it and retain it as an asset for the school district.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right, we will move on to item 7A, which is acceptance of the minutes. Be it resolved that the Board of Education of the Garrison Union Free School District does hereby accept the minutes of the regular business meeting of March 18th, 2026, and the minutes of the special meeting of March 23rd, 2026, as presented. May I have a motion? Any questions? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? All right, moving on to item 8A, approval of CSE, CPSE recommendations. Be it resolved that the Board of Education of the Garrison Union Free School District approve the Committee on Special Education and Committee on Preschool Special Education recommendations on student placements. May I have a motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Moving on to item 9, new business. Be it resolved that the Garrison Board of Education, that the Board of Education of the Garrison Union Free School District, upon the recommendation of the superintendent, hereby approves the new business items as presented. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Dr. Stoll, do you want to speak to any of these?
Yeah, a couple if you don't mind, Dan. On today's new business, we'll have approval for a vendor agreement to have Nico Stone come back and do our 8th grade legacy project mural. It was an incredible project that we started last year with our 8th graders. You can see it out in our courtyard there. And our 8th graders are really excited, our current 8th graders are really excited to do the next quarter of the wall and leave their legacy project here for a couple years. And when we get back to year 5, we'll overwrite we ran out of wall space. We'll overwrite year 1. But it's a wonderful legacy project that our 8th graders are looking forward to, so I hope that the board approves that. The last piece I will tell you is there's approval to access equipment, which is one of our older double ovens. We were able to procure a new oven, so when we were working with Whitson's now to maybe have food prepared here now, which will probably eliminate some of the issues that our community and this board has certainly heard about. If they're able to store some food and actually prepare the food here the day of, what'll happen is the quality will be better, and if there's any issues with lunch counts, we'll have some reserves so that they can quickly heat up some new food. So they've gotten a lot better, but we're just trying to incrementally improve. So the reason that we're accessing is one of the ovens, older ovens, is to make room for a new oven that we already have, that we actually have on site and just needs to be hooked up.
Great, thank you very much.
Yes, baking those pies for Thanksgiving with that bad oven. Yeah.
Well, if we do it again next year, Jocelyn,
Now we won't have to.
we have a new one.
Any other questions about new business? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? That brings us to our second public comments section. I'm not going to read the session again, the comment, the rule again, since we just did it. But if anybody would like to comment, public comment is open again. Hearing none, we will move on to item 11, board comments. Jocelyn.
I made my comment about thanking Mike and the team and everybody for all the good work. So, one time.
Eric.
Ditto.
Jen.
Ditto.
Nothing from me. Pete.
Just congratulations on the budget. I mean, it's a budget that reflects the goals of the district really well, and it's just great to see it in print.
Kent.
No.
Sarah.
Yes, I just had a first thank you for the budget, and in thinking about, I know we're still in the early stages of the Hudson Highlands Land Trust, but I have some reservations about this, and I also want to let everyone know that I think both our administrative team, Dan, you, and all the board have been looking at the history of this. There is a long history to this. Anyone in the public can go back and find all those old board meetings. If anyone enjoys watching board meetings as much as I do, you can go back to 2015, before that. Thank you, Greg, for looking through a bunch of them. So we are taking into account the long history of this issue. There is no rush to enter into anything. And I think Dan, you've done a great job of being transparent along the process. So I just wanted to say thank you for that and point that out to the public as well. And thank you for all the work on the budget and putting together one that keeps us under the cap and looking to thoughtfully use our fund balance for one-time expenses, which I appreciate, so that's not going over. So thank you.
Thank you. We do have executive session this evening. So, be it resolved that the Board of Education of the Garrison Union Free School District hereby enters into executive session for the purpose of discussing current litigation. May I have a motion?
So moved.
All in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? We will conclude the meeting without any further action.